Hello, everyone. Brock Vieira here with another episode of the Los Angeles Rams Insider Podcast. I'm your host and beat writer. Of course, we cover everything regarding the Rams, their playoff run, and their next opponent, the Chicago Bears. You can check out all of our work at www.si.com/NFL/Rams/on SI. But before we can even begin to dive into where the Rams are going to go, we're going to talk about where the Rams went. And the Rams went out to Charlotte, North Carolina, a wild card contest against the Carolina Panthers. So much talk about, so much to discuss. But instead of letting me ramble about this topic, why don't we bring in the experts, and especially a man who has lived and breathed the Panthers, was in the stadium, really experienced it live action, and can really illustrate exactly what occurred in that game. This is my friend, the gentleman joining me tonight, Ryan Smith. He has two podcasts you guys definitely need to check out for Carolina Panthers content: Inside the Vault, and of course, Winning the Division. Ryan's going to talk to you guys about his work, what he saw, and what the game means for the Rams and the NFC moving forward. Of course, welcome, Ryan. How are you doing today?
I'm well, Brock. Thank you so much for having me on. Still getting over that loss from the Carolina Panthers perspective, but yes, two podcasts for you to check out. Winning the Division, I co-host with former NFL tight end Ben Troop. We do all things NFL there. And then from the Carolina Panthers perspective, I also have a podcast called Inside the Vault, a Carolina Panthers podcast. That's on Keep Counting Podcast Network for those who want to check that out. But getting into the game, 34-31 victory, obviously, by the Rams, but in a great back and forth contest. It seemed like it was going to be a blowout there a little bit into the game, 14-0 Rams. And then it was that Sean McVay fourth down conversion that they missed that would have gone up 20-7 had they kicked the field goal. And instead, it was a 14-point swing the other way. Panthers were back in it. And it just seemed like we were trading haymakers there in the second half. And then all of a sudden, the Panthers, in my opinion, left too much time for Matthew Stafford on the clock. And again, my opinion, I was there in the stadium, as you said, a very hype atmosphere. Panthers pulled out all the stops. Cam Newton, Musim Muhammad, Steve Smith, so many legends, Thomas Davis, Luke Kuechly, Jake Delhomme back in the day. You guys remember him well. But and then it just seemed like at the end, the Panthers went into a soft shell defense, prevent defense. I'm interested. I'll ask you about Ajiro Rivero here as well, because you guys know him well too from a former Rams staffer under Sean McVay. Rewatching it again, I have a different opinion than I think I had on Saturday night driving back. He did send more than 5 rushers at the end of the game multiple times. Former Rams linebacker Christian Roseboom, one of the extra rushers, and he just wasn't able to get home multiple times, those extra rushers. And in fact, Matthew Stafford on that last drive, and Stafford, being the MVP candidate that he is, was able to put a dime on Colby Parkinson and really kind of pirouette into the end zone for that game-winning touchdown over Trayvon Moorwig. And Panthers just couldn't get anything going with that 38 seconds left, despite having all 3 timeouts, which I'd like to think had they converted that fourth down conversion, they would have gone down to tie the game and very least, and still might have lost the game, but in overtime, but at least maybe tie it. But obviously it didn't happen, and the Rams are moving on. A little long-winded answer there for you.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And that kind of brings into the main point that Rams fans have been discussing, and Panthers fans as well, is that final drive. Obviously, soft shell coverage brought more than 4 guys with the pass rush, but I feel like Evero's game plan gets criticized for that portion when throughout the entire game, especially after that first sort of rally by the Rams to kick it off. They really played very strong throughout the game and gave the Panthers a lot of opportunities to go out and win it. What was missing for the Panthers that they weren't, even despite the fact that they were playing complimentary football, they weren't able to seal it at the certain moments in order to achieve victory?
I think Dave Canales is going to learn a lot about himself this offseason, as it was announced that Ajiro Rivero is coming back for next year as the defense coordinator. And David Canales is not going to give up play calling. He's going to continue calling the plays. But I think he's going to learn, kind of like what we saw yesterday in the Bills-Jaguars game. The Bills could have taken Panthers could have taken the air out of the ball a little bit more there on that last drive. Still no guarantee they score the touchdown, but maybe wait a little bit more use a little bit more clock and maybe even run the ball on that third down with that they passed to Coker in the end zone. If they don't get it on, I'd still run it on fourth. I'd still go on fourth down even if they didn't get it, because you're trying to not leave Matthew Stafford with hardly any time to come back, because he is an MVP candidate. He's so good, and we know everyone in the stadium, including myself, knew once we scored. I said, crap, we left too much time for Matthew Stafford, and that's obviously what happened. So I think David Canales is going to learn that situational football awareness as he continues to grow in his coordinator duty or play calling duties as a head coach and kind of balancing everything. But Brock, I really think at the end of the day, this Panthers team is on the rise. If I could just say this really quick, I hope. What was your takeaway about Bryce Young? Because the Rams fans that I talked to and Panther fans alike thought this might have been his best game as a professional. And he's had a few highlight games throughout his career so far. But this game, it's one thing to beat the Rams in the regular season. It's another to go toe-to-toe in the playoffs with Matthew Stafford. Yes, you're playing at home, but you were 10.5-point underdogs. You weren't expected to be in this game. They didn't care about that, and they literally went toe-to-toe with the Rams after that 14-0 hole was closed, and they almost won the game. And this is going to be a team that is trending upward for the next years to come. Panthers got to get a little more pass rush and some linebackers on defense, but as a whole, Bryce is him, as the kids say. And he's got moxie. He's got charisma. Yeah, he's a little short. We all know that. He's not going to be paid $60 million a year, but he doesn't have to be. The guy has a formula of how he can win games, and he's a shifty little bugger back there. He's faster than most people would give him credit for, especially on the design rollout plays or when he has to take off and scramble. But he's got elite ball placement. He's a point guard. He distributes to the people around him, and he's an exciting player to watch. And I think people should not doubt him and his ability to be a franchise quarterback in this league.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I'm very glad you brought Bryce Young. What the Rams are doing defensively against him, I truly never understood. Why they're lining up guys like Poona Ford on the outside, or having him kind of try to control the edge, or just honestly just surrendering the edge during pass plays in order to try and create these, may I say, exotic pass rushes. It allowed him to roll out left. This is not a guy that's going to be able to step up into the pocket repeatedly just because of his height and, various things that he can't control. But his ability to get out of the pocket, be able to navigate the pocket enough to then use that mobility to go and get yards, especially on that touchdown, which I believe ended the first half against the Rams. He was great. I really love the fact that he didn't try and force the action. He allowed the game to come to him. He allowed his playmakers to go out there and make plays. Him and Tetairoa McMillan were excellent. Jalen Coker, phenomenal. I do feel, though, that had Xavier Legette just been 10% better on the night, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. I would be at home. I'll be on your show, and you'd be asking me questions about why the Rams lost, of course, to the Panthers. But hey, those are roster things that you can fix in the offseason. This was a big stepping stone for this franchise, and I think that Young has taken that step back into being that confident player he once was. I think that we don't talk about his rookie year enough. What happened with the head coach? Obviously, that being Frank Reich, having I believe, an offensive coordinator at that time who never called plays before, having a quarterbacks coach at that time who never was a quarterbacks coach at all in Josh McCown at that point. And before anyone says he was a former player, there's a lot of former players. And as a reporter, I mean, I haven't had this experience with the Rams, fortunately. I've had this experience in other places where you talk to them and you realize that coaching is not in their future. And that's what I'm not saying that's the situation with Josh McCown. I'm just saying you can't have guys that don't have that experience, expect them to come in and expect them to succeed right away with a young quarterback. I think with these last 2 years of the Canales, there has been both a flushing out of the system of just everything that was wrong in his initial preparation. So he's actually a year behind development-wise, and next year he's going to be entering that third critical year, even though it's his fourth. And that's when you're really going to see that jump. That leads me to my next question that I want to ask you about this game, which was what allowed the Panthers to be able to take advantage of all those opportunities the Rams left in the field. The end of first half, just that entire sequence, especially with instead of going for the field goal, the going on 4-2 failing, and then the Panthers driving downfield, almost getting there on a Harrison Mevis kick, getting there for sure on an Ethan Evans punt that actually kind of worked out for the Rams because of the way the clock worked out. And then with that being said, once you explain that, can you talk about how not only were they able to do all that good stuff, but then in the critical moments, why did they falter? Not just schematically, but why didn't Canales use those timeouts on the Rams' final drive of the ballgame?
That is something I'm still trying to wrap my head around, because I do think part of me thinks he wanted to save those timeouts because I think he realizes that if the Panthers were able to connect on a few of those passes to start the next drive, 38 seconds is plenty of time when you have 3 timeouts and you only need a field goal. You don't need a touchdown. They were clearly going to go to play for overtime, I think, had they caught a couple of those passes to get moving. So I think that's part of the reason why they didn't use the timeouts. Hindsight being 2020, we talked about the prevent defense earlier. Had Ajero been a little bit more aggressive, and let's say Stafford hits him over the top with a long pass to a Puka or a Davante Adams for 6, you score earlier. Panthers still need to get 3 anyway, and you got a lot more time to work with, and those 3 timeouts already still in your pocket anyway. So that's another way to look at it too. But yeah, I really think that the Canales wanted to save those timeouts, to answer your question, for those 38 seconds left, knowing that you didn't need to go to the length of the field. You just need a field goal to tie. In 38 seconds, 3 timeouts, you could have gotten that done had you gotten a couple of catches to kind of start that drive. But I feel like, not to say he panicked, but I almost feel like he just tried to get it all in one play multiple times on first and second down, and that just was a recipe for disaster after that, with 3rd and 4th down being too obvious passing situation with getting 10 yards a clip, and obviously that just didn't work out. And yeah, that's my answer there.
Hey, fair enough. I think that something that doesn't get mentioned enough, of course, is that at the end of the first half, once the Panthers did score, Puka Nacua put on a brilliant double move and was wide open for 6. He just dropped the pass. You have to wonder if that play was in the back of Evero's mind. And, of course, he's not playing to give up a touchdown. He's playing to go win the game.
And Jason Horn was out as well. He was in concussion protocol in the tent on that final drive, J.C. Horn for the Panthers too. So that might have also played in his mind too, not having your number 1 corner out
there. Yeah, and I do wonder, because there was never really a goal line situation, or even within 10 yards or 15 yards. My memory isn't serving me right. I don't even think when he hit the Parkinson pass, they're at the very most the edge of the red zone. I wonder if Evero thought to himself, I don't have my star corner out there. Let's try and bend but don't break, shorten the field, and let's see what we can do. Davante Adams has been making his catches like he normally does because he's been coming back from injury. Let's see, hey, instead of playing this whole entire thing, let's go 20 yards, 10 yards, and then 10 yards in the end zone. All right, let's let our defense not have to think a lot. Let's let them play loose and free, and let's see what we can do. It's a bold strategy. Sometimes it pays off, and sometimes you have Matthew Stafford throwing a beautiful dot to Corey Parkinson to just ruin your plans. But it's those little things that you do wonder how that plays in play calling. Moving forward, with this result, as we already mentioned, despite the fact that they're not playing any more football, this has set up the Panthers for an incredible season in 2026 if they can execute properly in the offseason. Talk to me about what this means for the Rams and the NFC as a whole.
I think the NFC West proved to be the best division in football this year. I said that going into the year, and that proved right. I think the Seahawks are going to beat the 49ers. I'm just going to give you some predictions for you here. I got the Seahawks beating the 49ers, and I got the Rams beating the Bears. And that's going to set up another NFC West showdown in the NFC Championship game, Seahawks-Rams once again, if my predictions are correct. And that will just prove Seahawks, 49ers, one of them is going to advance. But assuming the Rams advance, that's just going to prove the NFC West was a really good division this year. Those teams beat each other up, but yet you know each other well. And they're just all really good teams. But for the Rams, they better not feel like they're done and they got a safe enough lead on Chicago, because Chicago has been doing this all year long where they come back in the second half. So I would just encourage the Rams not to let up. Don't feel like you need to take your foot off the gas pedal. You got to keep it on the gas pedal, keep going, because Chicago will come back on you if you're not careful. That would be my caution against the Bears. I do think they match up pretty well against Chicago. Their defense has not been doing well all season. They've had some players out to injury and others who are past their prime, if you will, showing this year. So I think Matthew Stafford and the Rams will put up a lot of points there. On defense, I think you can definitely get pressure on Caleb Williams, having just lost his left tackle in the previous game to a torn patella tendon. So Caleb's going to have to be running for his life. The Rams receivers, Bears receivers aren't as big as the Panthers receivers, so you might have a little bit better coverage there. Guys on the back end like Quentin Lake and Kobe Durant and those guys. But I think it's going to be a great matchup, though, against the Bears. I do think the Rams are going to come out on top in a little bit of a shootout and setting up that matchup with the Seattle Seahawks. And I do think it'll be the Buffalo Bills on the other side, ultimately getting to the Super Bowl from the AFC side. I do think they're going to go in Denver and win. And I think Texans, assuming they hold on against the Steelers in Monday Night Football, will dispatch of the Patriots. And so Bills, Texans, Seahawks, Rams championship games is where I got
there. Very, very bold prediction. Love it. Love it. Let's continue on with the offseason for the Panthers. And, of course, the Panthers defense loaded with former Rams, as expected, of course. Israel Evero, as we've mentioned so far, former assistant for the Rams, of course, current defensive coordinator for the Panthers, had at one point the number one scoring defense in Denver in that 2022 season. And hopefully to reignite that for the Panthers moving forward. But the Rams have a few free agents coming up on defense. Cam Curl, Kobe Durant. Is there anybody out of those two, or perhaps another guy? And what is part of the list? Any veteran Rams defenders that you think would be a perfect piece for Carolina within the next year or so?
I mean, I'll take former Falcon Blake Landman. I think that's his name. I'll take him. I'll take him on this Panthers team. We could use linebacker in the worst way right now. Not to shine anything away from Roseboom. He is a good depth piece, but I don't think he's a good starting caliber team. I mean, the Rams did move on from him, obviously, already, so they know him well. So that's one. I would say Quentin Lake just got excited to an extension.
I don't want to bust your bubble, but unfortunately, Landman got extended to signed an extension as well.
Yeah, I know. That was just more wishful thinking.
But to be fair, maybe not this year, but the way they load up the contracts, potentially next year, Panthers could be making a move for him. You never know.
I would say, so I would say probably Cam Curl or Kobe Durant, who you mentioned. They do need a free safety to play opposite Trayvon Morgan. I think Nick Scott, former Rams safety, will not be back. Lathan Ransom, the rookie safety for the Panthers from Ohio State, might be playing more in the kind of the nickel area next year. I don't know if he'll be a full-time starting safety in the NFL. We'll see how that happens there. He might have the answer on that roster. We'll see. So I would say probably Kobe Durant would be my one guy there for the Rams. On D-line, I think most of those guys are pretty young, if I'm not mistaken, and are not close to being free agents, if I'm not mistaken, on D-line.
No, you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, they're all under contract for the next year. But that leads me to my next question, because there is going to be a question this year for the Rams between Byron Young, of course, the outside linebacker for the Rams, and Kobe Turner, both third-round draft picks in 2023. Both are in their third year, will enter their fourth year next year, and are able to open their extension windows this offseason. If the Rams are unable to come to a deal with both men, of course, after their fourth year or even before, they could be moved or they'd be a free agent to come to the Panthers. Between Byron Young and Kobe Turner, who do you think would be a perfect fit for the Panthers?
I like Byron Young. I think he's able to show some really good pass rush moves. And just like Jared Verse is kind of like the guy who everyone knows. But I think Byron Young is kind of like that silent assassin on the other end. And he's able to he at one point was leading the NFL in sacks at one point this year, and quietly stepped back a little bit. But still a really good player, and someone I think who would fit well in Carolina with that pass rush help that we definitely need. We've got a couple of young guys right now, but definitely need some more veteran help this offseason, which I think they're going to get. Bold prediction by me. Ram fans may not want to hear this, so I'm just I'll tread lightly, and then I'll come back.
Good call.
I don't know, based on Sean McVay's record and based on his history with certain players, has there been any talk of Puka Nacua being moved this offseason?
Absolutely zero talk of that happening.
Because I'm just saying, he's had some injury history like Cooper Kupp did. He's not as old as Cooper Kupp, obviously, but he's had some injury history. Some of the stuff that he's been doing off the field, you know that is well documented there. Sean McVay doesn't like distractions. He doesn't like things that are not all football. And it's just a thing that I'm noticing. Like, I just could see the Rams. They're the team that would take a young receiver in the second or third round if they didn't need to, simply because they wanted to get another guy in there to kind of mold after the Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp image, if you will. And he'll be less expensive, less injury history, and cheaper or younger. Sorry. And so I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying it should happen. I'm just saying, is it a possibility that with some of the injuries that he's had and the off-the-field distractions, could McVay and Les Snead, if they're not able to find that common ground with him in the offseason and that off-the-field issues, could the Rams do that?
You raise an interesting point. I know everyone is going to say, oh, like you said, there's no chance that they move him this year. And really, there is no chance that they move him this year. But you have to look at it from a kind of a broader scope. There's not a guarantee they're even going to extend him this offseason. And of course, he is in his third year, so they're going to go into his fourth year. We don't know what that looks like. On top of that, as you mentioned, the Rams have in the past, even when they've given big extensions, like Cooper Kupp, they'll move off a player if they don't feel like he's producing. Then you start looking at some of the guys in this draft class. You start looking in the backyard in Los Angeles already. Mekhi Lemon, he, in my opinion, for USC, he looks like Puka Nacua 2.0 with just a little bit more explosiveness, but less physicality. So you would have to kind of try and temper that balance. What would be interesting to see is how Nakua's extension is structured in terms of where the guaranteed money is at. Are they going to front load the guaranteed money? Because that could make him eligible for trade, maybe 2-3 years into his deal. And of course, an organization like the Panthers, you never know where they might be thinking of how they might go. While that is in the future, there is the rise, of course, the Polynesian pass catchers with Tetairoa McMillan being already in Carolina. Then you also have just from a football standpoint, a different element to add to that wide receiver room. And then, to be honest, I don't think Xavier Legette is proving enough to say that he is going to be a long-term option after his rookie contract expires. Please correct me if I'm wrong. They picked him up in the first round. They traded back in to select him. So he does have that fifth-year option, right? Definitely an interesting dynamic to say. Depends on, of course, how long Matthew Stafford plays for, right? When Devontae Adams retires, if Legette can take that step up, and even though he might not be that total package, if you take that step up as a bigger bodied player, would the Rams be interested in him as well? And how does that kind of affect the whole dynamic of the wide receivers in the NFL? Of course, all this talk is strictly hypothetical, but it is an interesting concept to ponder. I got one more question for you before we head on out of here.
Yep.
We know everything you said so far, but is there one piece of advice that you haven't said, if you had Ben Johnson's ear right now, that you would give him in order to defeat the Rams?
Yeah, I would say attack those corners, especially Emmanuel Forbes. He is known to, and the Ram fans don't need to hear me say this, but he's well known to give up some chunk plays down the field. And then I think on defense, on offense, if you can get Matthew Stafford off his spot and take someone like Nacua out of the game, Stafford's erratic. He'll throw interceptions very quickly if he either wants to force the ball in there or if you just get him off the spot. He's never been a scrambler, so he's gonna try to not try to take off. He's just gonna either throw the ball out of bounds, or if he is unsmart, he's gonna try to force it in there because he wants to make the big play. And then sometimes those get picked off. We've seen that plenty of times throughout his career, being erratic. So I would say, yeah, on offense, get the pressure on Matthew Stafford, and then on defense, attest those corners on the outside, starting with Emmanuel Forbes and company on defense.
All right. So did Raheem Morris talk to you before you jumped on the podcast? Because that sounds exactly what he did out in Atlanta. Thank you so much for joining me, Ryan. Once again, tell everyone where they can find you and where they can catch up on all your work.
Yeah, so you can find Keep Pounding Podcast Network, Fans First Sports Network for all the podcasts, Tobacco Road Sports Radio on YouTube.com as well for the video portion of those podcasts, audio wherever you get your podcasts. But it's Winning the Division is the NFL Central podcast that I host with former NFL tight end Ben Troop. And then Inside the Vault, a Carolina Panthers podcast, is my Panthers podcast that you can find there as well. I also occasionally do some articles for Sports Carolina Monthly and a few other outlets, but that's as fewer farther between. The podcasts are my main ventures from the media side right now.
Well, once again, everyone, Ryan Smith, check him out for your Panthers work. My name is Brock Vieira. This has been the Los Angeles Rams Insider Podcast. We'll catch y'all next time. Take care.